What I'm about to show you will fundamentally change how you view American democracy and your personal privacy. While everyone was distracted by culture war theater and political drama, Peter Thiel and his surveillance company Palantir have quietly built the most comprehensive domestic spying apparatus in American history, and they've done it with the full cooperation of the federal government. This isn't some dystopian future scenario or conspiracy theory. This is happening right now, today, with your data, your records, and your constitutional rights being systematically violated by a company that openly maintains enemies lists and defers to foreign governments on how to use their surveillance tools. By the end of this breakdown, you'll understand exactly how America has become a surveillance state that would make the Stasi jealous, and how one man's techno-fascist vision is being implemented through government contracts worth billions of dollars.
Earlier in the year, it was reported that Palantir is now all over the federal government. Doge, which swept in to reduce the deficit, brought Palantir with it. Because Elon, who spearheaded Doge, and Peter Thiel, who runs Palantir, they are both PayPal mafia.
This is how oligarchic capture actually works in practice, and it's so much more sophisticated than most people realize. The PayPal mafia connection isn't just some Silicon Valley networking coincidence. It's a coordinated effort by tech billionaires to capture government functions and convert them into private profit centers while expanding their surveillance capabilities. Think about the brilliant cynicism of this strategy. They sell Doge to the public as a cost-cutting measure, promising to eliminate government waste and reduce the deficit. Who could oppose making government more efficient? But what actually happens is that they fire government workers and replace them with Palantir contracts that cost far more money while giving a private company unprecedented access to citizen data. It's privatization disguised as reform, surveillance expansion disguised as efficiency, and corporate welfare disguised as fiscal responsibility. The timing is particularly insidious because it came right after an election where voters were promised that Trump would drain the swamp and reduce government overreach. Instead, what they got was the swamp being drained directly into Peter Thiel's bank account while government surveillance capabilities expanded exponentially. The people who voted to reduce federal power ended up empowering one of the most dangerous surveillance companies in world history.
They run in the same circles, employ many of the same people. So Doge sweeps in and leaves without cutting any spending. And in with Doge comes Palantir. And suddenly now, Social Security, the Treasury Department, the Education Department, Health and Human Services, they're all using Palantir software. And all their databases are being downloaded into Palantir, and they can all be cross-referenced for the first time.
This represents the largest expansion of domestic surveillance capabilities in American history, and it happened without a single vote in Congress, without public hearings, without constitutional review, and without any meaningful oversight. Peter Thiel has essentially been given the keys to every major federal database through a fake efficiency program that doesn't actually save any money. Let's be specific about what all their databases are being downloaded into Palantir actually means. Your Social Security records, which contain your entire work history, earnings, family relationships, and personal identifying information. Your Treasury Department records, which include your tax returns, banking relationships, investment holdings, and every financial transaction the government knows about. Your Education Department records, which contain your academic history, student loans, employment background checks, and potentially disciplinary records. Your Health and Human Services records, which could include Medicare data, Medicaid information, disability determinations, and connections to healthcare providers. All of this personal information that was collected by the government for specific purposes under specific legal authorities with specific privacy protections, is now being consolidated into a private company surveillance system. This violates every principle of data minimization, purpose limitation, and privacy protection that's supposed to govern how the government handles citizen information. Once this data is in Palantir's system, it can be cross-referenced, analyzed, and weaponized in ways that were never intended when it was originally collected. Your tax records can be combined with your health records to build psychological profiles. Your education records can be combined with your Social Security records to track your entire life trajectory. Your financial data can be combined with your government benefit usage to determine your political reliability.
Now, Palantir's already in use by FBI, CIA, NSA, DHS. So for the first time ever, the federal government has a searchable database of every citizen, and they could pull up in one interface your education records, your medical records, your tax records, your social security records, FBI records, CIA records, NSA with their phone calls and emails, all this stuff, all in one place.
This is the realization of every authoritarian government's dream throughout history: complete information dominance over the population. What took the Soviet Union decades to build through networks of informants and surveillance apparatus, Peter Thiel has accomplished in a few years through government contracts and data integration. We now live in a surveillance state that exceeds anything George Orwell could have imagined, and most Americans have no idea it even exists. The technical capability being described here is genuinely unprecedented in human history. Never before has any government had the ability to instantly access the complete life history of every citizen through a single interface. Your entire existence, financial, medical, educational, professional, social, and personal, can be pulled up and analyzed by any government analyst with access to this system. Think about the implications: every purchase, every doctor visit, every job application, every school record, every communication intersected by the NSA, every background check, every interaction with any government agency, all instantly searchable and cross-referenceable. But here's what makes this particularly insidious: this system wasn't built through transparent democratic processes where citizens could weigh the costs and benefits. It was built through the back door of government contracting, sold as separate efficiency improvements for individual agencies, and then integrated into a comprehensive surveillance apparatus that no one explicitly authorized. Congress never voted to create a total surveillance state. The American people never consented to having every aspect of their lives monitored and cataloged by a private company. This happened through bureaucratic capture and regulatory avoidance. The single interface aspect is crucial to understand because it represents a qualitative change in surveillance capabilities, not just a quantitative one. When your data was scattered across different agencies with different access controls and different purposes, it provided some protection through fragmentation. Even if the government had problematic information about you, it was difficult to piece together a complete picture because the information was siloed. Now, everything is connected, searchable, and instantly accessible. This also means that any government employee with access to this system can instantly become a threat to your personal security. Corrupt agents can access your complete life history for personal revenge, financial gain, or political purposes. Foreign intelligence services who recruit government insiders now have access to unprecedented amounts of citizen data. Political operatives can use this system to research opposition candidates, journalists, activists, or anyone else they want to target.
Do you know that Palantir maintains a list of over 1 million people who they consider potential subversives?
Palantir isn't just collecting data passively. They're actively categorizing American citizens as threats based on their political beliefs, associations, and activities. This is textbook authoritarianism, using surveillance technology to identify and target political dissidents before they can organize effective opposition. The fact that this list exists at all is a fundamental violation of American constitutional principles. The First Amendment protects political dissent, protest, and association. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures of personal information. The concept of maintaining government lists of political dissidents is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was designed to prevent. Yet here we have a private company, working under government contracts, doing exactly that. But what's even more terrifying is that we only know about this list because someone leaked information about it. How many other lists does Palantir maintain? Lists of journalists who write critical stories. Lists of activists who organize protests. Lists of academics who research sensitive topics. Lists of government employees who ask inconvenient questions. Lists of business leaders who don't cooperate with political demands. We have no transparency, no oversight, and no accountability for how this targeting system operates. The million-person number also suggests that this isn't targeted surveillance of genuine security threats, it's mass political profiling. There aren't a million terrorists or foreign agents or violent criminals in America who pose legitimate national security threats. This is clearly a system designed to monitor and intimidate political opposition on a massive scale.
Palantir flew their whole board out to Israel after October 7th. They reserved 200 positions at their company for Jews. Peter Thiel, the founder of Palantir, said, "I defer to Israel on the use of their technology. They maintain an enemies list."
Peter Thiel has explicitly stated that he defers to Israel on how Palantir's technology should be used, which means that Israeli intelligence priorities are directly influencing American surveillance operations. Let's think about what deferring to Israel actually means in practice. It means that when Palantir develops new surveillance capabilities, Israeli intelligence gets input on how those capabilities should be deployed. When Palantir identifies potential targets for monitoring, Israeli priorities influence those targeting decisions. When Palantir analyzes American citizen data, Israeli strategic interests shape that analysis. This is foreign intelligence influence over American domestic surveillance operations on a scale that would have been considered treasonous in any previous era of American history. The board trip to Israel immediately after October 7th isn't just a gesture of solidarity, it's a coordination meeting between American surveillance contractors and foreign intelligence services. They're planning how to use American surveillance infrastructure to advance Israeli political objectives, including monitoring and suppressing American citizens who oppose Israeli policies. This foreign influence operation is particularly dangerous because it's operating through private companies rather than direct government channels, which makes it much harder to detect and regulate. When foreign governments try to influence American policy through traditional diplomatic channels, there are established procedures for monitoring and managing those relationships. But when foreign influence operates through private surveillance contractors, it bypasses most oversight mechanisms while potentially having much greater impact on American citizens.
Their software is an interface for dozens of federal agencies and departments. The U.S. State Department said that they're reviewing the social media accounts of people that try to enter the United States. Think of this. If you try to immigrate to the United States or visit or apply for a visa, the State Department is looking at your social media posts to see if you've criticized Israel.
The State Department is now using Palantir's systems to screen potential immigrants and visitors based on their political opinions about a foreign country. This is ideological screening for immigration based on loyalty to a foreign government, which violates everything America is supposed to represent. If criticizing Israeli actions can get you banned from entering the United States, then academics, journalists, human rights activists, and ordinary citizens around the world will self-censor their opinions to preserve their ability to travel to America. This gives Israel effective veto power over international criticism of its policies, enforced through American immigration controls. But here's what's even more disturbing. If the State Department is screening social media posts about Israel for visa applicants, what other political opinions are they screening for? Are they looking at posts about American foreign policy? About American domestic issues? About American political candidates? This screening system can easily be expanded to enforce ideological conformity on any issue the government considers important. The automation aspect makes this particularly dangerous because algorithmic screening can flag people for political opinions that human reviewers might not even notice or care about. Palantir's systems can scan millions of social media posts looking for keywords, sentiment analysis, or association patterns that suggest insufficient enthusiasm for Israeli policies. People can be banned from America based on algorithmic analysis of their political opinions, without any human review or appeal process. Peter Thiel's pro-Israel politics become operational policy for American immigration enforcement through the technological systems his company provides. This is privatized political persecution disguised as national security screening.
Now, what do you think they're using to do this? Do you think the State Department is manually looking at every application of every person that visits America? They're using Palantir. They're using this software. They're revoking citizenship on this basis. They're denying entry on this basis. And now they're going to deploy the federalized National Guard to the cities to take control. Yeah, I don't know if I trust all this. And by the way, what did they do at Columbia and Harvard? I'll tell you what they did. Last year at Columbia and Harvard, there were massive demonstrations against the war in Gaza. And everyone spoke about this. At UCLA, they call it the war because there were intense protests. Jewish nationals that are not American, weren't even students, they were beating up protesters with metal pipes and baseball bats. There was a giant protest at UCLA, at Columbia, at Harvard. And Trump came in and he seized the endowments of these universities and said, I'm not giving your federal money back unless you hire security guards with arrest powers and ban Israel critical protests. Trump has effectively made it illegal to protest on campuses, enforceable by pro-Israel police on the campus, by dozens of security guards with arrest powers to look out for pro-Palestine protests.
Universities, which are supposed to be spaces for open intellectual discourse and political debate, are being converted into surveillance and suppression zones where criticizing Israeli policies can result in arrest by private security forces accountable to no one. The endowment seizure threat is particularly effective because most major universities depend heavily on federal funding for research grants, student aid, and various programs. By threatening to cut this funding, the Trump administration can force universities to violate their students' First Amendment rights without having to go through the legal system. The private security forces with arrest powers represent a particularly dangerous development because they operate outside normal law enforcement oversight and accountability. These aren't police officers who have been trained in constitutional rights and legal procedures. These are private contractors whose primary loyalty is to whoever pays them. They can arrest students for political speech without the normal protections that apply to government law enforcement. This also creates a surveillance infrastructure on college campuses that goes far beyond just suppressing protests. These security forces will be monitoring student conversations, faculty discussions, guest speakers, and academic research to ensure compliance with pro-Israel political orthodoxy. Students and faculty will know they're being watched, which will create self-censorship even around topics that aren't explicitly banned.
Now he's creating a quick response National Guard division to quickly respond to protests in every major city. And this might be happening right before a war with Iran. So let's say America did go to war with Iran. Where do you think the protests would start? On the college campus. Oh wait, they can't. Because if anyone protests the war on a college campus, the university's going to shut it down. And if they don't, the Trump administration will bring the DOJ down on them and take their money. So that ain't happening. What happens if there's massive protests in the city streets like there were last year against a potential war in Iran? Well, I guess the National Guard Quick Response Force will assemble and shut that down too. So much of the protests were organized on TikTok, where the hashtags went viral, Free Palestine. But under a new deal, which will see ByteDance selling TikTok to an American company, they're going to restrict the political speech on TikTok as well. I don't think you're going to see pro-Palestine hashtags getting traction there after this deal.
They're building the capability to suppress domestic dissent before launching military actions that would generate massive public opposition. This isn't about maintaining public order, it's about eliminating the possibility of effective anti-war organizing. The National Guard deployment represents the militarization of domestic protest suppression on a scale not seen since the Vietnam War era. But unlike previous military deployments against protesters, this one is being pre-positioned and systematized, with surveillance technology providing real-time intelligence about protest organization and rapid response capabilities to shut down dissent before it can spread. Historically, Unpopular wars have been constrained by the political costs of domestic opposition. Politicians had to weigh the benefits of military action against the political damage from anti-war protests, media coverage, and electoral consequences. But if protest can be systematically suppressed through surveillance and rapid military response, then democratic constraints on warfare are effectively eliminated. The Palantir surveillance system provides the intelligence infrastructure to identify protest organizers, predict protest locations, and coordinate suppression efforts across multiple cities simultaneously. Combined with the National Guard rapid response capability, this creates a turnkey system for eliminating political opposition to military action. This is exactly how democratic countries transition to authoritarian rule, not through dramatic coups or constitutional changes, but through the gradual construction of surveillance and suppression infrastructure that can be activated when needed to eliminate political opposition. The capability is being built during peacetime using efficiency and security justifications, but it will be deployed during crises to suppress democratic dissent.
Trump is running the show, and who does Trump work for? When Elon Musk shows up with a black eye and says that Trump is in the Epstein files, and then they drag him for 2 months over it, and Trump bombs Iran and has Netanyahu come over and pulls his chair out for him, you know we are an occupied nation. When he tells Americans they won't be rescued from a hurricane because they don't love Israel enough, you're getting your citizenship revoked because you don't love Israel, Harvard is being shut down because they don't teach Israel worship, you know we are an occupied nation. Do you want our occupied government to get bigger? Our occupied government is now going to have more power, more military, more jurisdiction? Absolutely not. I don't trust that even slightly. So this is not far-fetched. This is not in my imagination. This is not a fantasy scenario. This is real. They already did it at Columbia and Harvard. They already did it at the State Department. They already bombed Iran. Now we're going to bring in the National Guard. Really? I don't like it. And I don't trust it.
What we're witnessing with Palantir isn't just another case of government surveillance overreach. It's the construction of a techno-fascist state that combines the surveillance capabilities of modern technology with the political suppression tactics of historical authoritarianism. Peter Thiel has built the infrastructure for totalitarian control and handed the keys to a government that is increasingly controlled by foreign interests and oligarchic capture. The genius of this system is that it was built through seemingly legitimate processes, government contracting, efficiency improvements, national security measures, while actually constructing the most comprehensive surveillance and suppression apparatus in human history. Every step along the way could be justified with reasonable-sounding explanations, but the cumulative effect is the complete elimination of privacy, political dissent, and democratic accountability. Palantir represents the privatization of authoritarianism, where traditional government surveillance functions are outsourced to private companies that can operate with less oversight, fewer legal constraints, and more political flexibility. When the government directly spies on citizens, there are constitutional limitations and political consequences. When a private company does the same thing under government contract, those protections largely disappear. The foreign influence aspect makes this particularly dangerous because it means American surveillance capabilities are being shaped by foreign political objectives rather than American constitutional principles or democratic values. Peter Thiel's explicit deference to Israeli intelligence means that American citizens are being monitored and targeted based on their opinions about foreign policy issues that don't directly concern American national security. The integration of surveillance with suppression capabilities, through campus security forces, National Guard rapid response, and immigration screening, creates a complete system of political control. They can identify dissidents through surveillance, suppress their organizing through military force, exclude their international supporters through immigration controls, and eliminate their institutional platforms through funding threats. What makes this system particularly insidious is that it's being constructed during a period of relative political stability, which means most Americans don't see the immediate threat. The surveillance feels abstract, the suppression capabilities seem hypothetical, and the foreign influence appears minor. But authoritarian infrastructure is always built during peacetime and deployed during crises, when it's too late for democratic resistance to be effective. Peter Thiel has achieved something that no foreign adversary could have accomplished through military action or espionage: the complete surveillance of American society combined with the capability to suppress political dissent before it can organize effective resistance. He's built a turnkey totalitarian state and handed it to a government that's increasingly controlled by oligarchic and foreign interests. When the next war begins, the next economic collapse occurs, or the next political emergency emerges, the tools will be in place to eliminate any effective political opposition. And by then, it will be too late to restore the constitutional rights and democratic processes that are being systematically eliminated under the guise of efficiency and security. Palantir isn't just a government contractor, it's the technological foundation of American authoritarianism. And Peter Thiel isn't just a tech entrepreneur, he's the architect of American fascism.
I don't like it. And I don't trust it.